Good morning, Alec. How are you?
Good morning, Sonia. Thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
Lovely to have you with us. Obviously, very political show today because politics just seems to be all around us at the moment. Do you reckon that the Tories should dump Rishi Sunak?
Well, it depends what you want out of politics. Personally, I want to see the Tories do absolutely abysmally. Frankly, we have to think about things in the long term. People can often get caught up like, oh, this Tory leader is currently doing terribly. They're not doing the country very well. Get them out. Let's get a new one in. But you have to think the problem fundamentally is with the Conservative Party, not its leaders. The whole institution is rotten. And the existence of the Tory party is the reason, arguably, why this country cannot heal, because it sucks up all of the energy and momentum when it comes to wanting to stop immigration. They promise every election, oh, we want to get immigration down. Do they? Well, actually, they're giving us more immigration than ever. People want traditional social values. Well, all they do is undermine those. I mean, thanks to Boris Johnson, we now have no-fault divorce. So, I really do not like the Tory party, if you cannot tell. So I want them out of the game. So I want them to keep Rishi Sunak because he's such a terrible leader. He will lead them into, I would hope, electoral oblivion.
So you think he's going to still be there for the election? You don't think they're going to usurp him for a sort of Penny Mordaunt, for example?
Well, they could do, but it's not. It's going to be futile because they've already done so much damage. They've lost so much public trust. They've had 14 years to sort out so many issues, and they haven't. They're not even going to be able to start to fix the mess and the rot that they've allowed to fester in the country. So it's not going to save them. They might save a few seats. So you'd have that interest, but otherwise they're doomed. And frankly, I hope they do as abysmally as possible, because the closer they get to getting 0 seats, perhaps we'll get closer to the party, being completely destroyed. I think that's the only way the country will get better.
And Alec, doesn't it do your head in when people who have been, in their seat for a bunch of years, like, for example, 14 years, Sadiq Khan, 3 terms, and they turn around and say, vote me in and I will make such a difference. And it's like, but you were already there. What were you actually doing? And that it's like we're constantly being gaslighted, aren't we, by these people? I've never known such voter apathy. Have you?
No, and that's why it's fantastic to see that people just are not turning out. People are not coming out to the polls to vote Tory. And this is, I would hope, going to lead to a legitimacy crisis. How can you have a democracy where such a few amount of people are coming out to vote? You're going to get Labour, win a huge victory in the inevitable election. But it's not going to feel earned, is it? It's going to feel like, oh, they won by default because we have this first past the post system, which is just so abhorrent. And just as time goes by, because we know Labour aren't going to improve anything, the country's not going to heal or get better. So people are just going to become more and more apathetic. And that's ultimately a good thing, because hopefully then people will start to look for alternatives.
How much is the Middle East situation impacting on British politics? And I say that because obviously we've now seen, well, George Galloway's party was sort of the start of it. But we saw, for example, the Green Party candidate in Leeds, he was shouting Allahu Akbar and when he was elected. So clearly there is some influence going on there. People are so disturbed about what's going on in Gaza, right?
Yeah, well, obviously you've got the British population. For the most part, people are disgusted about what's going on in Gaza. They think it's far too over the top, Israel's response to obviously the attacks in October. And Israel's PR has been heavily damaged over the past few months. Whereas most people ordinarily just roll their eyes and are not really concerned about Middle Eastern affairs. But I think things are changing now and people are starting to say, this really isn't on. This is not okay what's going on. But then you've obviously got the Islamic population in this country. So they're obviously going to have solidarity with Muslim Palestinians. And so obviously that's why they've been protesting every week for months on end. And because the Labour haven't strongly condemned Israel, then obviously a lot of Muslims are now deciding not to support the Labour Party. And the interesting thing is, people that have been concerned about demographic change in this country, one of the talking points was, well, the reason why, like, for example, left-wing parties import so many immigrants is because they're importing a voter base, right? It's a form of gerrymandering, but it's not exactly paying off if that was the grand strategy, because increasingly we're seeing Muslims starting to form their own parties or running as independents and winning seats. That's what we saw with the local elections. So it's not working out for Labour, is it?
Well, obviously, people are so upset all over the weekend. Even people who don't live in London say London has fallen, which I take a great exception to. I don't know about you, but really, isn't the problem that everybody else is just fielding such poor candidates that they're not going to take out the incumbent mayor?
Yeah, one of the problems is so many people want to throw their hat into the ring, and it's really quite frustrating because I get it, right? Because it is frustrating because obviously loads of people that they have their own party, they think their candidate is the best, and one of the frustrating things with first past the post when it comes to, say, general elections is people are like, oh, I don't like Labour or I don't like Conservative, but because you end up getting the two, it's a two-horse race, well, I've got to vote for the one I don't like. That's a real issue, and it's same thing with this London mayoral election. It's like, you might not like the Tories, but if you want to oust Khan, who's just allowed crime to just get out of control, then I wish some of these other parties, Greens, Lib Dems, and the other smaller ones, didn't throw their hat in the ring, because then maybe we could have had a Conservative mayor and maybe London would be at least a little bit safer for the next few years.
Oh, you're saying they're diluting the vote. I mean, I thought it was interesting that Count Binface beat Britain first, right? Count Binface, whose major part of the mandate is to return CFAX. I mean, really interesting. And that kind of tells you that people are just sick and tired, aren't they? People are just sick and tired. We need to change it. Listen, Alec, can you answer our question of the day? And that is, what would you do to restore faith in politics?
Oh, well, I mean...
Small question to a big answer, right?
It is such a big question, honestly. I think, well, obviously, that I'm part of the Homeland Party, so I'm going to promote my own party and hope that, people start to endorse that party. I think the thing that would give me the most amount of hope is people abandoning Labour and Tory, like I said a little while ago, because... it is those two parties that have dominated for the past century. And if we're starting to reach this tipping point where the electorate is finally saying enough is enough and they are not coming out, that opens up opportunity for new parties, which is what we need. We need a breath of fresh air. We need to get rid of these decrepit, corrupt, old gang parties and get some fresh blood in with new ideas and new approaches that don't have entrenched interests. Fresh corrupt ideas, Alec. Is that what you're saying? Well, there are good people in politics trying to make a difference, and you've just got to spot them and endorse them. And that is the problem, isn't it? Is, as you say, it's a full marketplace of absolute wastrels. So it's quite difficult. I do know there are genuine people. There are genuine people in all areas of life. Obviously, there are genuine journalists, even amongst all of the flotsam and jetsam, in the same way as there are genuine politicians. But I think people are quite shocked, really, that Khan managed to get back in so easily. Were you? Well, obviously, we know that London is an ethnic minority majority city. So we know ethnic minorities trend to vote kind of for left-wing parties that are more inclined to give out welfare handouts and stuff like this. To be fair to Susan Hall, she did pretty well. She only got 80,000 less votes than Sean Bailey. Now, Sean Bailey was a lot more heavily promoted and propped up by the Conservative Party, whereas Susan Hall really wasn't at all. I hadn't even heard of her until about a week or two ago. But you have now, and we have to stop there. Alec, thank you so much for joining us this morning, everybody. This is Alec Cave, bringing a little bit more common sense, frankly, to politics on this morning. And we will be back after the top of the hour. Do not go anywhere at all. Alec, have a lovely bank holiday. Thank you for joining us on today's News Talk. We'll be right back after 9 o'clock.